Okay, let's try and unpack this.
Yeah.
Thailand's Prime Minister, Paetongtarn Shinawatra, she's just been suspended from duty.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big move, sending ripples across Southeast Asia. And it seems to stem from something as simple maybe as a phone call.
Well, simple on the surface, maybe. What's really fascinating here is just how fast everything unfolded.
Right.
And how, one single conversation can blow up into a full-blown national crisis. We're talking constitutional law, international relations, even these deep family legacies.
So our mission today really is to dig into the sources we have.
Exactly. Pull out the key details, the important nuggets from the news report so you can get a real handle on what's happening and, frankly, why it matters.
Right. We've got a bunch of reports here detailing the suspension, the events around it. We'll be looking at facts, some direct quotes, putting it all in context for you.
It's quite a story.
It really is. So the Constitutional Court, they made their move on Tuesday, deciding to suspend Prime Minister Paetongtarn Shinawatra. What does that decision itself tell us? And what's the immediate fallout?
Well, it tells us quite a lot about the court's power, really. The resolution was pretty definitive. It was a unanimous 9-year vote just to accept the senator's petition against her in the first place.
Okay, so they all agreed to hear it.
Right. And then it was a 7-2 vote to actually suspend her temporarily while they consider the full case. So it means Deputy Prime Minister Surya Yungrungringkit steps in as acting PM. It's a very clear signal from the judiciary.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because even though she's suspended as PM, she actually stays in the cabinet.
Yeah, that's a key point.
She's also the Minister for Culture, and that position, I believe, was just confirmed by royal approval on Monday, like the very day before the suspension hit.
Published the day of the suspension, yeah. That's a crucial detail. And, despite this huge disruption at the top, the government itself is trying very hard to project calm. You had the tourism minister, Sorwangthinthong, quoted saying something like, government work doesn't stop, there is no problem.
Right, trying to signal stability, keep things running.
Exactly, business as usual, or at least trying to appear that way.
But, okay, to really get why this happened, we need to zero in on that spark, right? The now infamous leaked audio recording. This wasn't just any phone call, was it?
No, far from it. This specific call, this private conversation, became the direct legal justification for the petition brought by those 36 senators.
So they pointed right at the call.
They did. They asked the court to investigate, alleging she lacked the necessary qualifications and integrity under the Constitution, Sections 160, Clauses 4 and 5.
Which relate to honesty, ethics.
Primarily, yes. Lacking honesty, engaging in a grave breach of ethical standards. And the court, using its powers under Sections 82 and 170, which cover terminating ministers' terms and the senator's power to request suspension, they accepted it.
And suspended her. She has some time to respond, though.
Yeah, she's got 15 days to file a written clarification.
So what was actually said on this call, what was so bad that it led to all this? The reports say Mrs. Paetongtarn made some pretty strong remarks about the commander of the Second Army region.
That's right, calling him an adversary, apparently.
Wow. And then her tone towards Cambodian Senate President Hun Sen described as submissive, deferential, calling him uncle.
Yes, and offering to, quote, arrange anything he wanted. It sounds incredibly problematic given her position as prime minister.
Especially given the context, right? The Second Army.
Exactly. That's the crucial context. The Second Army supervises the border with Cambodia, specifically the stretch from Sakeo to Ubon Ratchathani.
And that includes contested areas.
It includes 4 contested areas that are, right at the heart of a current dispute. Relations were already tense. There was even a skirmish recently where a Cambodian soldier was killed.
Oof.
And here's the kicker. Really, it was Hun Sen himself who released this private recording online, reportedly to gain leverage in that border dispute.
So he leaked his own call with the Thai PM.
Seems so, which just takes the whole thing to another level.
It's just wild. A private call, maybe intended to de-escalate things, ends up potentially ending her premiership. What's her explanation for all this?
Well, Mrs. Paetongtarn has said she phoned Hun Sen specifically to try and prevent more clashes, prevent more casualties.
Okay.
She insisted she had no ill intentions. She did apologize, saying, if the approach I took was unsatisfactory. And she even framed her remarks, like calling the commander an adversary, as a kind of negotiating tactic.
A negotiating tactic. That's a tough sell, maybe.
It's a very tricky line to walk, absolutely. Balancing diplomacy, negotiation, with how it might be perceived domestically and constitutionally.
So, moving beyond the immediate shock, beyond the call itself, What does this incident tell us about the sort of the bigger picture, the wider political landscape in Thailand right now? It feels like her government was already under pressure.
Oh, absolutely. It's not happening in a vacuum. This moment really exposes that ongoing fundamental tension in Thai politics. Between the elected governments, often led by Pheu Thai or its predecessors, and what people call the royalist military establishment, that sort of entrenched power structure.
Right. And her coalition was already weak.
Very weak, a razor-thin majority. And remember, the second biggest party in her coalition, Gumja Thai, they actually quit the alliance just last month.
Oh, okay.
Plus, there's talk of a no-confidence vote coming soon, and we saw thousands of protesters out in Bangkok demanding she resign even before this latest development. So yeah, pressure from pretty much all sides.
And it's not just a political crisis for the government, is it? It's often framed as a family crisis for the Shinawatras.
Very much so.
Miss Paetongtarn, she's only 38, described as a bit of a political novice, Thailand's youngest ever premier. It feels like we've seen this movie before with her family.
We really have. The parallels are quite striking. I mean, look at her immediate predecessor, Shweta Thaksin.
Also ousted by the Constitutional Court.
Exactly. For ethics violations appointing a minister who had served jail time. It points to this pattern, this maybe declining strength of the Pheu Thai party itself.
Despite winning elections.
Despite dominating elections since 2001. But they keep facing these challenges of military coup in the past and now these court rulings toppling their governments. And Paetongtarn herself, fairly or unfairly, is often seen as a stand-in, almost a puppet, for her father, Thaksin Shinawatra.
Right. That perception lingers.
It absolutely does. And it means any attack on her, any challenge like this, isn't just about her. It's seen as a challenge to the whole Shinawatra legacy, their influence. It becomes part of this much larger generational power struggle.
And speaking of Thaksin, he's got his own legal dramas playing out right now, doesn't he?
He certainly does. He's facing those lèse majesté charges, insulting the monarchy, stemming from an interview back in 2015.
Which is a very serious charge in Thailand.
Extremely serious. Carries up to 15 years in prison. He denies it, of course. But then there's also the Supreme Court looking into his extended hospital stay after he returned from exile last year.
Right. There were questions about whether he was genuinely ill enough to avoid prison.
Exactly. So that could potentially send him back to jail, too. It's just an enormous amount of legal pressure concentrated on one family.
So what's the overall impact, then? All this instability?
Well, it creates a leadership vacuum, for one, and just heaps more political uncertainty onto Southeast Asia's second largest economy, which, was already facing a slowdown.
Is there any talk of, like, a military coup? That used to be the pattern.
People always worry about that, given Thailand's history, but most analysts seem to think it's unlikely this time around.
Why is that?
It seems the royalist military establishment, that influential bloc we mentioned, they're perhaps finding other ways. They're more likely now to use legal maneuvering, these kinds of court challenges, to exert influence or achieve their political goals.
Like we're seeing now.
Precisely. It's become this recurring pattern, hasn't it? Judicial intervention targeting Shinawatra-aligned governments. It's arguably a more sophisticated way to contest power than a coup, maybe seen as less disruptive internationally, but it still effectively challenges the democratic process.
So we've really dug into quite a few layers here today. Started with that phone call.
Yeah, a single phone call.
Moved through the constitutional arguments, the court's role, and landed on these really deep-seated political dynamics, the family legacy, the whole establishment struggle. It's definitely more complex than just a headline.
It really is.
Yeah.
And if you sort of connect all these dots, step back and look at the bigger picture. What does this keep happening? This pattern of courts intervening so directly in Thai politics. What does it really suggest about where power actually lies?
Right.
And think about how personal actions, even things said in what you thought was a private conversation, can suddenly become these incredibly potent weapons in national governance. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What does constitute ethical conduct for someone in the highest office, especially when they're trying to handle tricky international situations?
That's a really important question to mull over. Definitely food for thought. We really encourage you, our listeners, to keep watching how these kinds of forces, legal, political, personal, play out, not just in Thailand, but globally.
Absolutely.
Well, that's all we have time for in this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.